We wait for the latest version of Android to hit. We know it will coincide with the Nexus device launch. LG has returned, revamped, and with the help of Google's design and ideal principles behind the Nexus program, delivered the best device for Android developers. But it isn't just for developers or tech enthusiasts. This could very well be the only device you need to update to year in, year out. There is simplicity to the Nexus line. The front face is distinctive with a subtle curve and sharply rounded corners. The Nexus 4 brought premium build to the table and was a completely original concept for the line. Fortunately, this year's design is equally as striking while taking vastly different strides to reach the end result. It's minimalistic and concealing with only the bare bone requirements prominently on show. The white model highlights the circular speaker at the top. The rear-facing camera prominently stands off from the rear panel with the LED flash also presented circularly. These elements blend harmoniously with the iconic hidden circular pulsating notification light at the base of the front panel that glows in an array of colours. The rear panel is a soft touch plastic that bears the Nexus branding with a glossy sheen. It ends abruptly with a slight curve into the vertical sides. The sides are a stark contrast to the rear panel. They are glossy like the Gorilla Glass 3 front panel and meld with the deep black. I see it as a blending element, and in terms of aesthetics and cohesion of the design, it's suitable. It just doesn't look and feel the most impressive for 2013. But the glossy sides gives a good gripping point over the slippery soft touch plastic. I will note that this is partly to do with the at times abrasive and well-defined ceramic unlock and volume rocker that contrast these sides. I found operation of the Nexus 5 to be perfect. The general size, definite and pronounced physical buttons, and seamless joins put this easily with other flagships. It is light at 130 grams and thin at 8.6 mils, impressively at times. But I feel that a refinement of the material selections, particularly for the sides on the next iteration, may be a good starting point. The base of the phone sees two speaker grills, but the one on the left is actually the only one producing sound. The micro USB port has been flipped, which means for some with a dock, mounting the Nexus 5 positions the device in the opposite direction, but wireless charging is permitted and alleviates this concern for me. I am hard pressed to fault the Nexus 5's build. When coupled with cost, there really isn't any precedent. This could easily be used as the building blocks of the Nexus 6, tighten the bezels and have the display falling centrally in the front panel with a sturdier and hard-wearing material for the edges, and I will be happily buying again. It is thrilling to see a no stone left unturned approach this season. LG and Google included every current flagship internal, from support of LTE and Wi-Fi 802.11ac, which both gathered good signal strength and excellent speeds of transmission, to including NFC and Bluetooth 4.0 to ensure all the latest technological advancements for 2013 through 2014 can be achieved. They included what will be the current standard of the Qualcomm Snapdragon 800 chipset that boasts a quad-core 2.26 GHz CPU, 2 GB of RAM, and the Adreno 330 GPU. I failed to note any stagger or jitteriness on the new vanilla version of Android, and performance is more than blazing. It's astounding, and it gets a tiny bit better by enabling ART runtime and the developer options over the standard Dalvik. Needless to say, gaming on the Nexus 5 is perfection. The on-screen buttons hide away to give a full canvas for watching all the amazing textures and effects. The GPS handled smoothly and accurately. Accelerometer, gyro, compass, proximity sensors all benefit from the new sensor batching to give more accurate and efficient performance. These are all the components that will be the basis of every flagship for the next 6 months at least, and you would normally fork out another $200 minimum to have them in any other smartphone, except the lack of expandable storage. The storage was no shock. Selection of 16 or 32 gig is kind of what's to be expected. It's just nice to have the freedom of expansion, but the integrated cloud storage works as it should and felt very intuitive for this device. The other critical point, the 2300 mAh battery. After the G2, I kind of anticipated at least 2600 or higher, and a 3000 was likely pushing it, but heck, we can dream, right? After 9 hours of charge, I would likely be left with no greater than 15%, and that was light use I would consider. I treated the G2 with its 3000 mAh battery far worse and lasted exceedingly longer. This equated to 9 hours of continuous HD video playback. Being LG, we were delivered a 4.95-inch True HD IPS Plus 1080p display with flawless 445 ppi pixel density and pearly whites. The colours are reasonably true, unsaturated by comparison to AMOLED displays, but plenty of brightness this time around and a solid contrast ratio. I have no issues with it. When I first launched the Nexus 5, it backed up from my last save settings, which was from the Note 3, and presented the wallpaper I had used. I didn't even recognise it at first because the colours lacked all vibrancy and depth that it does on the Note 3. It was remarkable the difference between the two at first for images that were dominated by vibrant colours. Now, I'm completely unfazed, think of the panel as nothing less than high-end, and applaud LG for the refinements and enhancements over the Nexus 4, especially in terms of the panel's brightness. As mentioned, the Nexus 5 is the first device to roll out with Android 4.4 KitKat. Not just roll out, but it will continue to roll out with the latest version of Android first. That, for me, is the most important feature of the Nexus 5. An OS is only as good at what it learns and refines from, and getting the latest, cleanest version straight away without waiting for carriers and OEMs to put their spin on things is sublime. If you haven't seen it yet, I covered all the features of the KitKat update, so check the description or annotation on screen to get the big picture. The superficial changes like the transparent notification and navigational bars, full screen immersion for media, and the refined Roboto font make the OS that little bit more stunning. The larger icons dominate the screen, and the 4x5 layout in the app drawer means your application library can go on endlessly and will be a customizable option for other OEMs. Editing and theming your own version is cake. The options are very instinctive. The cleanness of the OS stems from the removal of a dominant amount of the blue accents from all of the applications and interface. Of included applications, Hangouts is now your messaging hub with built-in SMS, MMS, and GIF support. This intertwines with your Google Plus account and really makes a seamless hub for chats, be them text or video. You now have the option of 2 picture viewing applications. The standard gallery app is there, along with Photos, which has a common UI to Google Plus and integrates well with cloud storage on your Google Plus account to keep a backup of photos within your free cap or purchase cap. Both have photo editing ability, but I will say Gallery has far better non-degenerative options for that. The biggest inclusion is of course the more streamlined use of Google search throughout the OS. In the phone app, it sorts by who you regularly call and most recently called. If you search here, you can find local listings easily, call them, and a Google search will be conducted to find an appropriate contact photo for that number. And Google Now is far more prevalent should you choose to use it, and I suggest doing so. It gives a more detailed and refined contextual set of information for you and is very useful for a handful of objectives. But it is now alive and breathing as a homepage launcher, always listening and waiting to hear you say, "Okay Google," so it can follow your next request. This operation only works in the home pages, and I wish it worked across the OS, but I guess that's Motorola's selling point. It also has a fixed homepage off to the left. I found it worked fairly accurately even with my Aussie accent, and it managed to clearly operate even when I was at a loud bar on a Saturday night, for instance. It isn't a forced upon experience, as you can simply swap out the launcher if you choose, but I am glad to see Google taking charge with its concepts to make it a front runner. The display caters to videos. The single speaker at the base, however, doesn't cut the mustard. It's too quiet. That's my only complaint, but it's a big complaint. I could not watch videos with the kids around or any amount of noise for that matter, which is massively disappointing. The camera as well, 8 megapixels with an optical image stabilizer. I was really excited at first, especially after the triumphant effort LG put in with the G2. In terms of video, I was impressed. It certainly does present a more balanced and stable shot when on the move, and the focus worked for the most part really well. It is the photos where it falls short. Under conditions the G2 succeeded. The camera OS boots slowly, the shutter takes some time, and the autofocus is hit and miss, particularly when trying to grab a macro shot on a small subject. The lower the available light, the slower it gets. Usable shots in non-optimal conditions was almost a 1-to-1 ratio to unusable shots, and I found using the new HDR Plus mode a requirement most of the time to get a well-composed and rich photo. I did manage to get excellent photos out of this camera though. It's just when you have sloppy performance from shutter and software, taking HDR Plus shots all the time meant long pauses between frames and missing the critical moment you're trying to capture. HDR Plus also output a weird effect from time to time where it would interpret motion blur on a shot and replace it with heavy pixelation. Night performance actually surprised after all I've said so far. My HDR Plus photos again gave extremely detailed shots with minimal noise, and the standard efforts out of the camera were bright with some noise, but better than I've seen from more expensive smartphone cameras of late. I'm certain most of the complaints are purely software related, will be patched soon, and I will have a more pleasing experience. The bottom line, the Nexus 5 is the developer phone for the budget-minded consumer. It gives you the ability to keep up to date with the latest version of Android in its purest form. Android KitKat will find its way everywhere thanks to the minimum requirement being shed to half a gig of RAM. The hardware is first class, minus a few perks you do see on some other flagships, but for the $400 I dished out to secure my Nexus 5, I am overall completely content. I feel liberated to have a device I do not feel locked into operating in a specific way, and you will see in time how much my Nexus 5 will change. It's a simple yet sexy phone, has everything you need for the next 12 months, and is waiting for you in the description below. I'm Kurt, and this is KABOOtech. See you next time.